is our impacted people panel. As you see, some people have left, some people have stayed, and we appreciate you, those of you that stayed. This is to me, as an impacted person, this is one of the most important panels that people should have stayed for, and I appreciate you staying. And I'm going to have all the panelists introduce themselves real quickly, and then we're going to start with a couple of questions. And if you guys have questions for the panelists, feel free to ask. So we're going to start here, ladies first. Your name?
Hello, my name is Lucia Alamo, and I work for Enter Community as a community health worker.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tino Negron. I just served 30 years of incarceration. I've been released home under the 1584 Juvenile Act, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm 6 months out, and I'm proud to be a part of the resurrection of this community and the interaction that's been taking place. And I just want to be a part of something different, something positive, and make a change to help those that are still incarcerated believe that somebody like me could come home and do some positive things, and they too under those conditions will finally find a way out of the same. Thank you for staying and listening to what we have to say.
Good afternoon, my name is Fred Hodges. I'm one of the ones who was convicted of a crime and impacted by the criminal injustice system. One of the things I'd just like to say today is that today I work with Fannie Ritchie, been involved with criminal justice for disenfranchised people out of the city of Bridgeport. Today, I got a little mixed feelings about some of the things that I've seen today. I know it's positive and a lot of good things can come out of that. But one of the things that we're still being impacted every day in the second. And although a lot of this stuff is good and we're coming together and we're talking together, I'm really here for real solutions to some of the issues that we have and some of the issues that they talk about. I've been on the front line with Fannie Ritchie, so I see the guys when they come home. We have a residential, 8-bed residential program, and we do a pre-release. Fannie Ritchie, Diane, myself, we've been going inside the prison for the last 10 years. There's some of the issues that people are affected with when they're coming home. It's a good thing that they're just now starting to address them issues, but more importantly, I think that the state can do a lot more, because the state, as far as ordinances need to be taking place here, because some of the things have to be forced. And I don't mean physically, but some people have to be forced and pushed in order to do some things. And I think the municipalities and what I was talking about here, I want to continue that conversation, because we have to come together, the municipalities. If the DMV, if a person can't just get an ID, and the DMV is in charge of that, then the governor or somebody in charge need to get them together to bring about so a person can get an ID to come home. You know, I mean, I could talk about a lot of other things, I'm gonna let Diane talk, and then we can get into the conversation. But I want to thank you for staying back, because this is a very important issue, because it doesn't just affect us, it affects us families and people that we know that's been impacted by the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Daima McKnight. Let me open up by saying, in the name of God, the beneficent and merciful, we greet all you in the greeting words of peace. And in a world of confusion, we all need some peace. I was formerly incarcerated myself for 17 and a half years, over a 25-year sentence. I've been out for the past 13 years and some change, and been involved with criminal justice reform, reentry frontline basic support services for the past 10 years, and I've been going in prisons to do reentry work, pre-release and post-release for the past 10 years. And I just want to say, because I've done that work, I've been on the other side, and now I'm on this side, providing services as a frontline service provider, as Fred has said. And I wish we would have had an opportunity to say this when everyone was here, but the photo op is over, so you know that's what happens. But the people that are here, I appreciate you, and I hope you take what you hear to bring with you to deliver to others, to clarify some of the misconceptions about what is going on. I want to tell you in 2 seconds, 5 seconds, the The state of reentry. What is the state of reentry? First of all, we have people going around the country. This is not divisive. This is reality clarification, saying that criminal justice reform doesn't include reentry. This is ludicrous. You can't have criminal justice reform without basic support services for people when they get out of prison, or else they're going to reoffend. So we can change all the laws we want, throw reentry services out the window and say it's not a part of criminal justice reform, and let out 10,000 people and there's no support services for them when they hit the community. That is a part of criminal justice reform. What is the state of affairs in Connecticut with reentry? Connecticut was on its way to make history. We were premiered in reentry, second chance, first opportunity. But what happens is when you got a machine, you can't take a piece out of the machine and throw it out of the window and still say it's the same original product. And what I mean by that is we were doing some great things, and we're still doing great things pre-release inside of a prison. But when the governor cut the budget, they threw the baby out when they meant to throw the bathwater out. There's no post-release services when a person gets out. What does that mean? He can't, if he didn't get his ID prior to getting out, there's no state-supported services. If he doesn't get it from an agency that's privately funded or federal grant, there is nothing for him or her, pardon me. I don't want to leave my sisters out of the conversation. So this is the reality of reentry. We had a great model, but we threw a piece of it out the window with the budget cuts. You can't get, there were things going on like Fred was doing with some of that reentry money that was there. He was helping people get forklift certifications. He was helping people get Ocean 10, Ocean 30. He was paying for some guys in the residential their driver's license, which makes them more marketable, more employable to be hired by a company. It increases their opportunity for employment. So that is the state of reentry. So I go to other states and they're giving us praise, they're giving us the salute, and I'm saying, hey, wait a minute, you don't know what's going on. We got people on a city level telling the guy, don't worry about it, we don't have money for your ID, but we got a new thing, we'll give you your city ID. And the guy goes in there, he pays $15 for a city ID, not knowing that this is not good for I-9. He has to go in and have a state ID to fill out the I-9 for identification, or he cannot get a job. He goes, he gets the city ID, pays for it, it's worthless, bottom line. He gets the city ID, he says, wait a minute, I have to get my birth certificate to get the state ID because this won't get me a state ID. He turns right around at City Hall and says, hey, you just gave me a city ID, can I pay for my birth certificate? They say, no, you need a state ID to get it. I'm done. There you go.
Thank you for pointing that out, brother. So my name is Daryl McGraw. I'm a formerly incarcerated person. I've given the criminal justice system 10 years of my life in and out on the installment plan, meaning I would go in, come back, go to make sure the food was still gross, and come back out. I appreciate everyone that stayed in the room, and when this footage is seen somewhere, I want people to say, well, where was that panel? How did I miss that? Because to me, the most important people are sitting at this table, and they're sitting here because these are the people that are closest to the solution, right? So I'm humbled and honored, and I just have to say a little side note that Fred and Daid at the end, they were the ones, along with Kenny Jackson, who actually really put the criminal justice movement for formerly incarcerated people in motion. When I was in prison, they were coming there talking this criminal justice stuff and telling us that we could change and it was possible to live a life crime-free. And they were telling us this was possible. And it was something I remember going to Daid after one of his groups. I said, man, I want to do that, man. When I get out, man, I want to be a part of that. And he was like, be easy, brother. There's a place for you when you get out. And he says, if there's not, he said, if it doesn't exist in your area, create it. And those of you that know me, I've been doing that ever since. I will start with a question. I have a couple of questions. I will just put it out to the panel. We all family, so either one of you who feel that you want to answer it, or all four of you can answer it. So the first question is, since we're talking about dignity for all, right? We've seen a lot of stuff today. Everyone was talking. I didn't hear a lot of people talk about dignity, right? And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about dignity for individuals, not only individuals on the inside, but dignity for people on the outside. Everybody wants to be treated a certain way, and everybody should be treated a certain way. So I want to put out to the panel, because for some reason I think dignity might mean a little something different to certain people. So I wanted to ask the panel, what does dignity look like to you? Yes, sir.
Again, my name is Tito Negro. Dignity looks like to me that when a person actually sits there and tells you that this is what they're going to do for you, you intend to learn how to believe. These two gentlemen that sit to my left, I've known them since I was 6 years old. All three of us come from the same project in the city of Bridgeport. We all went away for a long time. And while I was incarcerated, I had to learn how to not narrate, I had to learn how to navigate through the Department of Corrections prison system from the time of 1988 all the way to the time of last year, September 10, 2018. And after they went home, dignity to me means after they went home, they just encouraged me with a letter. They convinced the Department of Corrections commissioner to allow them to come up inside the facility to visit me, to encourage me, and explain to me that I'm loved, and explain to me that, you know what, it's going to be okay, and explain to me that if you change and you learn how to think different, that opportunity will come. You know, dignity is when you talk about you really want to help somebody, you get involved in this field that became sexy. I told that to somebody in the hallway that does the numbers on strategic planning for policy and management. I said, reentry has become sexy. So everyone wants to be involved. But these two gentlemen didn't teach me about reentry, they taught me about a belief system. And I learned how to believe. But if you want to know what he was talking about the thing of a documentation. We'll go into the city hall. And I'm not going to name the city I was in, but I went to the city hall, I was in the halfway house, and I didn't have no form of identification. And they gave me this card here that he was talking about. And this card here don't get you nothing. It can't even buy you a pack of gum. But then after that, he called me when I was still in the halfway house, and because he worked with Family Reentry, he was able to come to share dignity with me by putting me in a vehicle and get it approved to take me to another town. We went to 3 different DMVs because the lines were out the door. And he told me to not get discouraged and to continue to do what? To believe. And he said, I promise you, if you continue to believe, I'll get you some form of identification, because I can't allow you to walk through a city with no form of identification after serving 30 years of incarceration and somebody pulls you over, because you will go back. So I met with him and we went to the DMV and I got a form of identification. And this is what he's talking about. But how many da'is are there going to be to provide to a community of people that don't have these resources that are being said today that are available? What avails our community today is a bunch of words with no action. And again, I can tell a long story, Darryl, a long story about a lot of things, but that's not what this is about. This is about bringing imagery to some issues and concerns that we are talking about. This is realistic, this is not a joke.
I think the dignity also is really about the respect of the human being that just come home from being incarcerated, that he's at his lowest point, coming home and afraid. You know, he's not getting any respect, you know. And I like to just tell the story, you know, and what we do with reentry is fine, but the post side, I heard a lot of talk about the pre-release and reentry starts inside, and it really doesn't start inside. But on the post-release side, when you're talking about dignity, sometimes we send them through programs like we send them through the laundromat, you know. Okay, you gotta sign this, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. And a person still doesn't really get it. You know, have you ever take somebody on a job interview and then they get turned down and it shoots them? It's like it took everything, every hope that they ever had in their life, and and they feel at that particular time, the dignity that he's talking about, I don't have no respect because this guy don't understand that I just came here for that job to try to interview for this job, and I really want a chance. And he just got shot down. So we're talking about human potential, we're talking about human development, and how that human development and that human potential is going to start. It's going to start on the post-release side. And I can't stress that enough. I know we keep talking about not services, but that is the carrot. If a person doesn't have anywhere to go, to help them with that dignity, to become dignified and a respectable person again, because it starts with what? With housing. Having a place over his head, you feel better. It starts with a job, because he starts to feel that he can take care of himself and his family and have self-sufficiency. If you don't have some of these things, you're not going to feel pretty much dignified or have any dignity, especially when you keep going and trying and people turning you down. So I appreciate you asking that question about dignity, because I don't know anybody that doesn't come out the penitentiary that doesn't feel a sense of purpose and feel some dignity inside themselves after just doing that bid, and I'm ready for a second chance, and then gets knocked down like that. And I don't think that we really understand what happens on the front line. We're up here, we talk a lot about up here, but on that front line, that's where you really find a person where he's feeling that he has dignity, or he's feeling no self-esteem, man. He's feeling, and that's where it's at right there. You're either gonna have the dignity, or you're not gonna have any self-esteem about yourself, and you're gonna go back to an equal opportunity employer. And somehow we have to bridge that gap, and that dignity is the opportunity, and how we as service providers or just human beings, how we help take this person step by step. I hear some people say that when they come home, well, I put them in this program and they should know. You talk about a person, and then we talk about rehabilitation, right? I know some people have never even been rehabilitated where I come from. They don't have, the way that they look at survival is survival of the fittest. They don't have no principles or values that you might think, or what society say principles and values are, because of the way that they had to be raised up and the way that they come from. So when you talk about rehabilitation, when you talk about dignity, we got to start on the ground level. And sometimes we miss that, because when they come home, we just say, we got you got this, you got that, we got this. Well, how are you really feeling right now? When a guy comes home, I tell you, when they come home, they come to my program, if he smokes a cigarette at first, I say, how long you been home? I mean, how long you been in? So I've been home 5 years. He said, why are you smoking a cigarette? I understand the anxiety. The anxiety is high. That's real. We're not talking about that when they first come home. Then they come home, are they addressing any substance abuse issues when they come home? This is going to help the person have dignity in his life. And if you don't have no retention in there, when a person gets on a job, and I got to talk about it. I'm on my phone right here. I'm on 24-hour call. They call me all day, all night. I have people that get on jobs and they don't understand the etiquette of the job, and then get somebody say something, they bring it straight to the streets. No, you can't be disrespecting me, man. I walked off that job. I said, oh, don't do that. So what I'm saying, job retention. That helps a person be dignified and have dignity also. There's a lot of things that we talk about that I think we really miss, the small things. We're going for all this big stuff, and I have no problem with it. Don't get me wrong, because that's needed too. But we have to bridge that gap, and bridging that gap is bringing some of us who were formerly incarcerated, and it don't gotta be me. So don't think that I'm this person that know everything, but I know collectively we can make it happen, man.
Right.
But we gotta be serious about what we're talking about if we're talking about criminal justice reform. If we're really serious talking about criminal justice reform, and we have to take it to this governor. He's gonna have to put up, based on what his 10-point program or whatever it is, we're gonna have to take it to him. Because if we're talking about dignity, the state gotta get involved with dignity. I look all around the state, I ride around and I see where the state gave up X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars for this project. I'm a taxpayer. And although some of my comrades that come out of the penitentiary aren't taxpayers yet, but because I am, I think they should have opportunities. And I think the governor has an obligation that people, that certain things that he can do, he need to have an ordinance that certain jobs that come out of this state, they have a certain percentage of ex-offenders on them jobs. Entry level, there's not a construction job that difficult that you can't start a person on an entry level that will help them with the dignity that Daryl just asked me about. Because if you're going to talk about dignity, that's not black and white. There's some other things that go into that to make a person feel dignified. The feel part of this society, what we say, that we're supposed to be loving and having in this country, that people who are formerly incarcerated. I just want to leave with this here. I've been home 13 years. And we always talk about this and ex-offenders that, but I never heard the state or the feds say, Mr. Hodges, you're an ex-offender, you don't have to pay no taxes. They can talk about all that, convicted, felony stuff, all that stuff they want. But when it comes tax time, I ain't never seen them say, oh, that's a felony. You don't pay no taxes. So, because we are paying taxes, we need to hold them accountable the way they hold us accountable. And I'm not talking about war, but this is how the Boston Tea Party started. For all of us who are formerly incarcerated, it was what? Taxation without what? Representation. And that's what's happening with us right now. It's taxation without representation that we need to formalize and get this thing on the road so we can have that dignity that Daryl was just talking about. Thank you very much.
To me is, if you're gonna do some talking, you gotta put some action into what you're talking about, right? So I work with formerly incarcerated people, and my job doesn't have no funding, right? So I come out my pocket and do what I gotta do for these individuals because I want them to succeed. One, my integrity means a lot, and my dignity means a lot to me, right? So if I want them to succeed in this roadblocks, I gotta make a way where they're gonna be successful, right? So I reach out to whoever I need to make it happen, or I come out my pocket because everyone needs help, especially that whole ID barrier. That's a big barrier right now. A lot of people come out of DOC, not just courthouses, DOC with no identification. Some of them live in Michigan or Puerto Rico, can't get a birth certificate. It's really hard when they don't have these credentials to be able to get a job. So you can't get a job with an ID or Social Security card. So my thing, dignity is integrity and putting action to your talk.
Thank you. I'll just answer for the sake of answering it because they cover so much and really great. Just from another perspective, dignity to me is just valuing me as a human being, that my life is worth something, but also because I don't want you guys, with this movement that's going on, that's been going on, and Mr. Dyson was a man who was, oh my God, I thank God for that man. I remember being in prison from the 80s to 2005. And Mr. Dyson was one of the first people that came in there and talked about our issues, man. I thank you, sir. I thank you, brother. Thank you. And I just want to say dignity to me is just, people valuing my life as equal as anybody else's life. My life to be worth something. My life matters, There's a movement, Black Lives Matter. People's lives matter. But in the same token, I know that out of ignorance, I made a decision. This is for me, personally. I participated in taking someone's life. May God forgive me. So dignity to me is also understanding my responsibility and my accountability to them. That I owe a debt. And this is why I do what I do to help prevent those situations from repeating themselves on a re-entry level and on a preventative level before people even get in trouble. And I dedicate my life to that. And that's important to me. That's dignity too. Because this ain't Hug a Thug Day. This ain't what this is. This is about grown-up, responsible adults who've taken responsibility and accountability for their life and they serve their time and they don't have a life sentence. Like Representative Porter said, you shouldn't have a life sentence if you don't have a life sentence. But it's also about us understanding who we are. Don't judge us from afar and say, oh, those people acting like the world owes them something. No, we're tax-paying American citizens, but we also take into accountability what we have done in ignorance and error, and this is why we do the work that we do. And to a lot of us on this panel, I can speak for us, all of us, including my sister, that most of us, success to us is that when we die, that one person goes up to that microphone and say we did something that positively impacted their life. That's success for us, and that's dignity.
That's right, sir. That's right. This is dignity right here. This is dignity right here. So, I'm gonna put this out there. Thank you so much for everything you guys have said. And it reminded me, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about this, one of the Super Bowls, where I think it was like the Patriots or somebody, and everybody thought the game was over. And they started leaving the stadium, they left the stadium, and some people got in their cars and they went home. And only to find out that the game wasn't over and it was actually won. So we're not going anywhere, you know. And it, you know, for us to sit here when all the lights are off, and I know each and every one of these people on this panel personally, we would have sat here and we would have held this panel with no one here. Because that's what it's about. And we've never, you know, many times, each and every one of us here have a story that nobody knew some of the stuff that we did or had to do for somebody else. And that's what it's about. And, you know, I think that, I don't want to preach, but they said that the first will be last and the last will be first. Something like that. So,
Yes, sir. That's
I heard that somewhere. So the next question was, what could Connecticut do better when it comes to criminal justice reform? And, you know, anybody can take that. What could we do better? What could the state do better in reference to criminal justice reform?
There's a lot that we could do better, and we've done some great things. I'm not a negative person. We've done some great things. There's a lot that we can do better as a state. But one thing in particular, just to inform you about is really, and I want you to just think about this with open ears and open your heart to this conversation. There is a law in Connecticut called the Cost of Incarceration Bill. We have experienced the impact of this bill from people who have sat in our office and their mothers passed away, their fathers passed away, and they just got out of prison, released from prison, EOS, no parole, no probation, and their mother left them an insurance policy, and the state put a lien on it to pay for cost of incarceration. This is something that has to be done away with. In this bill, this is taking us back to medieval times. In this bill, which was enacted under the Rowland administration, the Get Tough on Crime campaign, Get Tough on Crime in the penitentiary, not in the street, but Get Tough on Crime in the penitentiary. I don't even know how that campaign slogan got him in office, but he got in there, it's history. But what he did was, when they created this law will impact you if you're released from prison. If you serve 30 years, like the gentleman here, up to 20 years that he's out, released, up to 20 years, they can put a lien on his property. If he gets a lawsuit for cost of incarceration, if his mother dies and leaves him an insurance policy, they can put a lien on that for cost of incarceration. If he dies and bequeaths that wealth to his children or an insurance policy through inheritance, they can put a lien on that of his children receiving that from him up to 20 years of being released from incarceration. And this is something that needs to be looked at. And it's weird because this conversation is not popular. You never hear people talking about this bill. And a lot of people didn't know that this bill, that this law in Connecticut General Statutes existed. And it's Connecticut General Statutes 18-85A, pardon me, 18-85A, and down the subcomponents of it. Thank you. Just want to talk about that.
Thank you.
I think one is in line with what Diane was just talking about. At one time, Connecticut, during Get Tough on Crime years, Connecticut was like number 6 or 7 in the country in building prisons, where the population exploded. You know, when I was over 20-something thousand, You know, I was in summers when they were single cells and they double celled them all up. And I guess what I'm saying is, the state was part of the problem, the state has to be part of the solution. The state has to be part of the solution. You have tens of thousands of people, because you're talking about how you're closing prisons, but there's no services out there. The only services that individuals are getting is from reentry roundtables that develop all over the state that are doing the groundwork, but they're not being funded by anything from the state. Now, I don't know, I've been heard and told before, I have no idea about this, but I always heard that the state don't lose money, they just shift it. You know, you take it from one pot and they put it in another pot, because taxes is always coming in and taxes is going up, and you don't gotta be a rocket scientist to figure out if you was paying $4 for something last year and you're paying $8 for something this year, that's a surplus. So all I'm saying is that the state has to get more involved, and we have to push the state to get more involved, because they were involved in building prisons and putting people in them. They have to get involved with the rehabilitation and the reform of individuals that they put in the prisons.
To touch base on, touch a little base on what you said about prisons being closed. I think that we can be better at, the money that we save from closing these prisons, we should be using it for reentry. We should be using it to create more programs for those formerly incarcerated people coming out, to be able to give them the tools they need to be successful in the community.
But you shouldn't be having to take money out of your pocket.
Yes, but I will if I have to.
That's right.
Because there's a need, we have to meet that need, because we want them to succeed.
No, it's just unfortunate that that's.
And that's really one of Bill Dyson and Andrew Clark's babies in justice reinvestment. They've been talking about that with the building bridges for. When I came home in 2006, 2007, I just came out of the penitentiary, and they were talking about justice reinvestment, and I haven't seen reinvestment at all since that time. So the money that they've been saving, the money that they've been putting up from commissary, people buy commissary, that goes to CERT team, where it should go back to inmate accounts, or it should come back into the community as far as reentry is concerned. There's a lot of things that the state can do that they're not doing. Even so much with the phone thing. I just seen that a lady is paying $4,000 to talk to her son. I mean, that's crazy. That's ludicrous, man. And then the state is making this, they're talking about if they take away the phones, the state again, if they take away the phones, they're going to lose $5 million. Come on now, you're not going to lose nothing. You're going to find a way to pick that back up. But for those inside, it will help them, people get in contact with their families. And I know kind of be off subject, but it's about the state and what they can do better to help those who are inside and criminal justice reform on the outside, period.
Thank you. We got two more questions. What recommendation do you have, and I think we kind of touched on that a little bit, to my policymakers, and what would be that one recommendation that you have, and hold on to it, because like I said, we're not going anywhere. So you might not have heard it today, but you're going to get tired of hearing us eventually. And people should remember these faces, because like I said, we're not going anywhere. And our voices need to be heard consistently until change actually happens. So what suggestion, what would that one recommendation to a policymaker that you would make right now, like that we should be pushing as we're moving into 2020?
There's a bill right now, like I said, the bill that we just, what we want to push in legislation, and I talked about forceful incarceration, is very, very important. But there's a bill right now that's being pushed, and it's kind of frightening to people because they don't understand the details in the bill. So it's called clean slate legislation, and what it would do is it would give people who have been, in Senate Bill 691, people who have been incarcerated for misdemeanors 3 years after their release from prison with no new crimes, no reconvictions, they will be given an automatic, what is known as a pardon or expungement. They'll have no record. And then the person 5 years for non-violent felonies, after 5 years of release with no new crimes. And then they wanted to leave out violent offenders, which really, violent offenders like people who commit homicides have an extremely low rate, according to the Bureau of Statistics. It could be less than 1.5% as far as a reconviction for a new crime. The lady did a study in California, 988 people who were released from California prison. She studied them in a longitudinal study over a period of 20 years, and none of the 988 were reconvicted. We even compromised and wanted to put in the bill a third tier of up to 10 years that a person is out that committed a violent offense, they would be given an automatic pardon. Now, the evidence-based research, it's not what I'm saying, this is just facts. DOC uses this statistic that when a person is out beyond 5 years, it's a 98% chance that they won't reoffend if they make it to 5 years. So to take the fear out of those kind of bills that are being pushed, if a person's going to reoffend, they're going to reoffend before the 5-year mark, and they're definitely going to reoffend before the 10-year mark. So there's nothing to fear. But what it would do is give people their full citizenship rights back as they return to society. So once again, quoting Ms. Robin Porter, a legislator, like she said, if you don't have a life sentence, you shouldn't have a life sentence. And those laws keep people disenfranchised when you can't get certain jobs. Well, what kind of jobs, Are you going to be a lawyer? I don't know. I may never be a lawyer one day. Or maybe it's highly unlikely. But I could be a limo driver. But since 9/11, I can't drive a limo and get a PSL license with a conviction unless I go through an appeal process. Since 9/11, I can't be a security guard and get a guard card if I have a conviction. Since 9/11. So this is why pushing this legislation is extremely important, because people won't have to carry the mark of a conviction for the rest of their life. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last question. Nobody?
Yeah, this clean slate bill, I think that's one of the most important
I think
bills.
that's probably like on
That would help tens of thousands of people in Connecticut that have so-called violent on their record that really is not violent if you take into account the substance abuse issue, which is the underlying issue of any violence in the hood and where I come from. And a guy might hit somebody in the head, but he's not really that violent, but I got a habit. And I'm trying to take care of my habit. And all the research is showing that it's a brain disease. So he's being affected by that, physically as well as mentally. So how could you say he's violent when if the mitigating circumstances of addiction wasn't there, he might not be that type of guy. So it really needs to be looked at when you're saying violence. Because everybody, when you say, I know Son of Sam, that's violence. The Unabomber, that was violence. But a lot of the stuff that happens in the hood where we're from, I really don't see where if a person has a chance, and even with people who committed an act of what they call murder, because a lot of it to me in the state of Connecticut, if the grand jury was here, it wouldn't be a murder. It would be broken down to something less serious as murder, So when you talk about that, we have to look at the bigger picture of this whole thing. When you talk about violent offenders, are they really violent? And like Diane said, if you put 10 years attached to that, then I think anybody that was committed that crime won't commit that crime after 10 years or any crime. And I know people from being inside that had committed what they call murder, and how remorseful and how it was really a mistake and they was high. And they'll tell you themselves that there was mitigating circumstances in the crime that they committed, and how being locked up for 15, 20 years, or even just 5 years. Some people aren't remorseful in it, I'll be honest with you. But there is a lot of people who committed certain violence that are really remorseful. And if they had the second chance, they wouldn't do it again. People that's coming out under the bill for Latino that caught their crime before they was 18 years old. There's a lot of young men that's coming out that's out here now on parole, like 75 or more, that are committing any crimes that have violent offenses. And you're productive citizens right out in front of your union, you know where they are. So I think that bill is definitely one of the most important bills that's out right now that we should really be taking a look at as a state.
I'm a violent offender. I did 8 years in prison for assault one, right? That doesn't mean that tomorrow I'm gonna go out there and commit assault one. I believe that those who are violent offenders are less likely to go back into corrections because it's a lesson learned, right? For me it is anyways. But I don't think it should be 10 years. I think it should be, why would it have to be 10 years? Why it can't be 7? Why it can't be 5? Why it can't be 3? You know what I mean? Everyone deserves a second chance, no matter what. You know what I mean? So they always want to categorize violent offenders and non-violent offenders. In reality, the ones that keep going in and out of prison are non-violent offenders.
It's true. Yeah, all the research says that.
I've been home 9 years. And I've been home 9 years and my crime happened 15 years and 6 months ago. And I'm still being treated like it happened yesterday. And it's not right.
Before I say the last question, I think it's important that our voice is always heard at these tables because in other areas as well, we always talk about like human resources people not really understanding how crimes and how criminal records happen. And I think in the era of mass incarceration, when the crack epidemic was happening, a lot of us picked up charges that we probably normally wouldn't. And I know for myself personally, just listening to my fellow constituents. You like that, right? That's what's up. We in the Capitol, yo. We took over the Capitol. That it made me think about 15 years ago, I robbed a drug dealer. And I robbed him because I had spent my whole check with him all night. And when all my money was gone, I asked him, can I get one till next week? And I'll pay you back. He said no. So I robbed him. He called the police and said I robbed him. He went to jail for selling drugs and I went to jail for a robbery third. And that still, to this day, haunts me because I've been in places where people have said, well, you got a robbery on your record. If they only knew that I robbed this dude who was, you know, and not that excuses the behavior, but you really need to understand how this can happen, you know, and that is on my record for the rest of my life until we get a pardon or something. So, but that has prevented me from many opportunities. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of cool opportunities to do a lot of really cool stuff, but there's been some things that I've been denied. You know, I remember working as a case manager and I was working with this guy and we were doing some really amazing work together. He was a Navy vet. So he said, I gotta go to the base to get some, to buy some groceries and I need your help. Now, I have been working with him, he was super paranoid. And when we got to the base, I showed my ID, they said, he can go in, but you can't. And they said that I was denied entrance upon the base ever in life because of my felony conviction. So that freaked the guy out because now we're at the gate and he's like, why can't you come in? You're my worker. And, you know, I had to explain that to him, you know. So these are the situations, these are the things that, you know, the photo ops don't show you. These are the things that you don't get to see. You know, this is the real stuff that we don't care about all the other stuff. We care about helping people. And that's what real dignity is about. We're going to finish up with this last question and I just, you know, I thank you for just being my friends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the work you do.
And Andrew and Bill Dyson, you know, thank you for the opportunity, you know. So with all that being said, this kind of piggybacks off the last question and we'll wrap up and maybe if some people have any questions for the panel. Where should we focus our efforts to have the biggest impact? Like we need to make some impact now because we see people couldn't wait to get out the door, right? So we need to really start to look, sit down, come together and figure out what's our strategy. Where are we going to focus our impact because we need to make some change. Not just for us because we are all fortunate to be sitting here. In another hour I'll be in McDougal with 25 people who have been sentenced to 25 years or better doing life bids. And I get to tell them about my day today, and they're excited just to find out what it was like. So I want to be able to tell them that we're out here making change for them. So what will be our largest impact?
there's just no one thing, but with me, is one of the issues that they were talking about today, and that's housing and employment. You know, I mean, that's what helps a person become have dignity and self-sufficiency, is housing and employment to me. And one of the most important things with employment, it has to be retention. Because a lot of people that come home, they get jobs, but they don't have the retention, the stick-to-itness, if you will, for the job when they get it. And what it is, it's going to be on us as service providers to be able to debrief them, for lack of a better word, daily on how is it going on the job. Our population don't understand in creating wealth is through employment or having your own business. They look at getting a job as getting paid. So if there's no retention and there's no education about what you can, how you value work and what you can get out of that, and taking care of your family and having self-sufficiency and having a roof over your head, the retention is so important when you get a job. I can't stress that enough, man. So housing, retention, and employment.
I would say, Tina, so,
Yeah,
go ahead, brother.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
You know, my hands sweat. Yesterday, I actually seen an airplane, like, just as close to the back of that wall. And, you know, I was in the back seat of the truck. And I was on my way to Jersey, and I'm on parole. And my parole officer, these are real life stories. My parole officer found out the type of work that I've been doing. You know, because we sat here this morning and this afternoon and heard some people talk about that the work starts before you get out. And that's reintegration. You know, I had the opportunity to sit on the panel where some people came in to visit me that work for the United States Attorney's Office. You know, we had some people like John Walker from the Second Circuit coming up to see me. And I remember when Andrew Clark sent me a letter about, say about 7 years ago, and I was told to write his department on behalf of being released because I fit this bill with this criteria. And it got to the point in my life where I had to start to believe that these things that I was hearing were possible. Let me say that again. I had to get to a point in my life where the things that I started to believe were possible. So, you know, these young ladies, these young men, they heard about, because a lot of information goes viral. And they heard about these 7 young men that were up at a facility inside of the Department of Correction. And they were young when they went to jail. And they wanted to know what these people knew. And then the Department of Corrections Commissioner and the Miss Rinaldi's and Miss Sispalek and the Angel Curos, they came up there with their suits on and they wanted to know what these dudes knew, what these young men knew. And I remember when the Department of Corrections, we were sitting at a table similar to this, and it says skills of socialization. To be able to have a skill set to understand the voice and the ability to communicate. And I remember what Darryl was just talking about, that he was able to go up to a facility at McDougal Walker and share these stories with these young men about what's transpiring in the community. Believe me, they're holding on to some things that he's telling them about what he heard in these rooms today. But if you don't have something attached with hope, like effort, all you have is a dream that eventually turns into a nightmare when you wake up. And if you ask me, well, Mr. Negron, how do you know that? Because I dreamed for 30 years that this nightmare would one day be over. But yesterday, going on a trip all the way up to New Jersey to see an ocean that I never thought I would put my hands in the water. I ain't been in a swimming pool in 30 years. I ain't seen an airplane other than a wreck yard with a bird. That I said, I can't wait till one day I can see a bus with windows that have wings, where other human beings were flying across the country. And some of us just appreciate being in a room full of people that say they care about people. But what's sad is that sometimes we're in a room full of people that say they care about people, and they forget about the people. But I'm on the phone with them young men still, that some of them are still sitting at that table waiting for an opportunity. So it became my responsibility when that opportunity presented itself to be that responsibility. Because one thing that you do inside the Department of Correction, you may be away, but you're not away from what's going on in the community. Whether it's telecommunication, whether you want to provide them with laptops, because they're real excited about that. And I want this community to know that. They're real excited about being able to be in a room with a laptop. But the sad thing is, if you put them in a room with a laptop, you're going to keep them from reality. You're going to keep them informed with some information that's not even important. What's important is that they hear that there's people in this community, whether there's 14, there's 44, or there's 400,000, that really cares about them. And if you ask me again, Mr. Negron, how do you know that? It's because it's the gentlemen, the young ladies that sit before me, and the young man that sits on the podium, and the young men that sit in the front, that sent me a piece of paper and said, if you do the right thing. And they went up to the Capitol, this building I believe it was. And they never told me what they was doing, because they didn't want to provide me with hope that they didn't see no effort. And they came up here for 3 or 4 years straight. And they argued and they brought new information about, you know what, these young men like Tyrone Whitaker, Tino Negron, and Floyd Sims, they've changed. You know why? Because we don't know how to fake a move on our counterparts. And our counterparts know when we're faking moves. But if you've been paying attention, neither do I. Because if I was faking a move, I won't have no time to sit in a room full of people that I believe don't care about the problem. So if you're close to the problem, then you know what the solution is. Because we once was the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia, would you like to say something? Oh, yeah, so.
Oh, yes. Brother said some amazing things. I forgot, man. I forgot my name. I just want to
I
say
forgot
that.
where I was at too. I was kind of like, yeah, go ahead,
But no, that was powerful, and I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody on this panel. I appreciate Darryl, and I really appreciate the people that support this movement. And I think that's going to make the greatest impact, is more people getting involved that haven't been in prison. We need you to become involved, and we need you also that when you do get involved, you must allow the people who have been incarcerated to sit at the planning table and the strategy table with you. And so many times we see organizations pop up, and they can be more effective if they wasn't using people who've been incarcerated as a poster child, animal in the P.T. Barnum, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. You know, it's got to be more than that. Don't, hey, I got an ex-offender, you got one? You got me? I got one right here. Step out there in front of the mic. No, but what about in the planning and the strategy sessions? Do you have that person that's been formerly incarcerated sitting at the table with you? And we heard Chris Rosario say that many years ago, coming back and forth to the Capitol. He said, that's a saying up here. And we adopted that saying. I appreciate that saying. If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. I don't want to be on the menu. I want to be at the table. In the planning and strategies, and to prove that this works, that's why I know we're going to have the most impact. We need your input if you haven't been incarcerated. Join this movement. Family Entry, about 13, 14 years ago, they wanted to do something in line with reentry, prisoner reentry. And they went in consultation with Kenny Jackson. Kenny Jackson sat at the table with them. They listened to him. He said, listen, this is an effective strategy. You want to do reentry? You got to get successful. I know people are into a word thing today. You got to get people who are formerly incarcerated, who are successful, back into the process to help facilitate successful reentry for people coming out of prison.
Yes.
And they listened to him, and they implemented that strategy. They took him to California, to San Francisco, to the Delancey Street program. They studied that model. They took components from that model. They brought it back to Connecticut, and they built the Fresh Start, the original Fresh Start program. And they had the Yale research on board, and the research was proven when that program was off the ground and running at full capacity before those budget cuts, that they had, their recidivism rate was more than half of the state's overall recidivism rate when compared through the Yale research from Yale University. So I think that's going to make the greatest impact. You don't have to be in prison to be involved with this. We actually need you but we just want you to take our people who have been incarcerated, and there's not any of us at this table. There's a lot of people out there who've been out 30 years and doing some great things. Don't just use them as a prop. Sit them at the table with you, and you'll see how effective that'll be if you put them involved in the planning strategy.
Thank you. So we're gonna put it out to the floor real quickly. If anybody has any questions, comments, statements. Yes, sir.
Something real quick. Well, first of all, thank you so much. As Daryl mentioned, you guys learned so much from each other. I learned a lot just in this short period of time, so thank you for that. Fred, you went back to the last panel and you mentioned the mayors getting together, and I think, to me, if there's something that will get justice reinvestment, really kicking into full gear, it's that. It's the people in the communities now. We have 10 roundtables. If all of those mayors and first selectmen got together and said, this is important to us, and like the ACLU, like Anderson, what you did with the governor, you did with each of the mayors, they're in a race right now. Have them commit to this platform of not just supporting it in their own communities, but together, and pushing back on the state for these resources to go where they need to go to help people. I mean, to me, that's political will, and that thing came out about Central not hiring, and if those 10 mayors did a letter to our president and said, you need to be support, because the same president, and it's not just the one we have now, it's in a lot of universities, they'll say we support and we want people from the city to be successful, and yet they have a disconnect when those people have records. And so it's got to be that whole picture. It's got to be meeting people where they're at and having them be successful. And so I think that coalition has to go more down to the local level.
And I thank you, Andrew. Think about it. When you were saying that, I was also thinking about, I don't know why this came into my brain, but I was thinking about like the civil service letter. When you turn a certain age, you get a letter and you have to do the civil service thing. You have to do it, right? And I was thinking, if you fall into a certain criteria, those of us that know about mass incarceration, if you were incarcerated between a certain amount of time in this era where Black and brown people were being incarcerated at large numbers, I think that your situation should be revisited, because we need to really look at what actually created that, because that was a whole trove of people that looked like me that ended up incarcerated. Like it was like a family reunion as we would go in there, everybody there. And now that we understand that kind of was not probably the way to go, because now the addiction world looks a lot different. It's a health crisis now. So if we're revisiting how addiction looks on that side of the fence, why wouldn't we revisit how criminal justice looks on this side of the fence? Why are we still suffering that? And I always say, if the war on drugs is over, then free the prisoners.